It would seem that we are not the only ones pursuing our goal of increasing the world's agricultural literacy rates. This is Talk Ag to Me. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and if you'll notice, I'm in a bit of a different setup here. My microphone is not on the side, and if you look behind me here, you can see that I'm definitely not in my room. That's because I'm currently helping out with a agricultural education-based camp here at Fresno State, and we are actually going into our second to last day here as I'm recording this. So it's a bit of a makeshift episode, but it's going to work and it'll be great. And I'm hoping to potentially do an episode on this camp and tell you guys a little bit about my experiences, but we'll see how that looks going forward. Another thing that's happening actually the day after tomorrow. So I'm not going to really give a lot of information, but very soon I will be flying out to the state of Washington to participate on a panel for the American Farm Bureau Promotion and Education Summer Conference. They invited me to be a panelist over for their conference to talk to their board or their committee about agricultural literacy projects, about my experience in agricultural literacy, about my research. Pretty much just to share a little bit of everything about what I know about ag literacy and hopefully help inspire them to become more motivated and more engaging in their own agricultural literacy efforts going forward, potentially even providing them some advice and some consulting along the way. But before we get into all that, and I will definitely cover all of that in content going forward, we've got today's episode, which is a doozy. It's a great one, and it's very timely for the conference I'm about to go to. This episode is an interview with Daniel Meloy, otherwise known as the Executive Director of the American Farm Bureau Foundation, which is the Foundation for Agriculture, which is the organization that's mostly dedicated to agricultural literacy for the American Farm Bureau. They have an assortment of different programs and projects that they're working on, many of which have to do with high school and elementary school education regarding agriculture. They have a publishing company for children's books regarding agricultural practices and operations, and they have a variety of other apps, games, and programs. They partner with Ag in the Classroom. They do a lot of different things to help improve ag literacy across the country. And it's, as I'm sure you have already caught on, a very similar goal with what we're trying to do here on Talk Ag to Me. So that's why it's so exciting to have this episode go on. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think of Daniel. He's a fantastic guest. He was a lot of fun to get to talk to about all of this. And I look forward to potentially working with the Farm Bureau more going forward in terms of agricultural literacy projects. I think we're starting to see a big expansion in terms of agricultural literacy projects and research. And I'm just thrilled to be able to be maybe not at the forefront, but definitely in the mix of the big competing is the wrong word, big cooperating organizations and groups that are working towards this goal of improving agricultural literacy in the country. So that being said, I really look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on today's episode. I will fill you in about how the conference goes and about the future of ag literacy as we go forward. I'm hoping to do an episode soon talking a little bit about my research and my master's project going forward with this whole agricultural literacy project that we've been talking about for a little bit now. But that's all going to have to come a little bit later. For now, tune into today's episode. Enjoy it. Let me know what you think. It's a bit of a shorter one, but it's a really good one. So make sure you give it a full listen and let me know what your thoughts are on social media and all the different platforms. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like, share, do all the things. Go check us out on Patreon if you're interested in donating. It's by no means mandatory, but it is very much appreciated. And any donations will go back into this project that we are so passionate about. But that being said, as we always mention, make sure you share everything you learn in this episode with your friends and family outside of just posting on social media. Have discussions around the dinner table. Those are always where the most fun stuff happens. But I think that's all I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know how it goes, and let's get straight into it. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and in today's episode, we're interviewing a member of the American Farm Bureau who's a little bit more dedicated to our project here on Talk Ag to Me, the ag literacy side of things. So I'm going to allow him to introduce himself, but I'm really excited for this conversation today. So would you mind letting the crowd know who you are?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brendan, for having me. I'm Daniel Meloy. I'm the Executive Director of the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I was really excited to hear about some of the things you're getting involved in, just because I've been doing this ag literacy based podcast for about 4 years now, and I always enjoy hearing about other projects that surround this thing that I'm so passionate about. So thanks again for being here. One of Nope.
My
uh,
apologies for the train that you might hear in the background.
no worries. One of the things that I always find interesting about the American Farm Bureau is just how expansive it is. So before we get too far into it, for anyone who doesn't know, could you kind of break down what your department of the American Farm Bureau is involved in, and just in general, kind of what the Farm Bureau covers?
Absolutely. Farm Bureau itself is the national voice of agriculture in the United States. And with the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture, we really focus on ag literacy. We are a 501c3 separate entity, and with a separate mission of building awareness, understanding, and a positive public perception of agriculture through education. So really our focus is educating kids where their food comes from. And we focus on, kids as young as pre-K all the way through 12th grade.
Wow, that's awesome. And, very, very closely reflects to our mission here as well. This podcast is a bit more dedicated to working on having conversations with the general public about what's going on in agriculture, but we do a lot of work with education on the school level as well. I'm actually personally studying right now to be a high school ag teacher, so I'm doing a lot of work in that department as well. We talked about it briefly in another interview, which anyone listening to this, if you want to hear it, you can go to agnetwest.com and listen to that interview. But basically, you were able to break down for me some of the programs, the resources, and things that you guys are developing for teachers and for parents to be able to use for their students. Could you just kind of give us a description of what some of those things are?
Absolutely. When we look at what the foundation does, the product that we put out, it really falls into one of three categories, whether it's resource development for educators to use in their classrooms or parents might use with their kids at home. Teacher professional development, actually, helping them to become better teachers and teach whatever subject they are teaching through the lens of agriculture. And then also book publishing as well. And so with the creation of educational resources, for many years, we've created physical resources, the things that you can hold in your hand, and whether that's something like our really popular ag mags, which are kind of at the fourth grade level. It's a newspaper-ish kind of publication that covers a different topic of agriculture and includes interviews, so kids can be exposed to different careers. It includes different activities and different things to read. And so we've got over 24 different topics of ag mags. It might be a game that a kid would want to play. We know that when kids think they're just having fun by playing a game, but they're actually learning, that certainly goes to the benefit of their learning. So we've created a number of card games, things like Go Fish. There's the popular Spot It game that we have created an agriculture themed game similar to that. But we also have online games as well. Our platform, myamericanfarm.org, has 27 different games. And that platform's been around for over 10 years. Really wonderful thing that happened fairly recently is that we achieved our 1 millionth gameplay on that platform. And it's a great platform for kids pre-K through fifth grade. Has, the games can be searched by grade level, but also by class subject. So if you want a geography lesson or a math lesson, the parents or a teacher can search by that, so they can get what they want the kids to learn, but also something that would interest the kids and be fun for them. We have other programs for older kids as well. Our Purple Plow Challenge is a really wonderful way to get kids thinking about things like hunger and food scarcity or soil conservation, and things that the kids at that age really are thinking about anyway. And so through the Purple Plow Challenge, we put an issue and a challenge for them to think locally of how they would solve a problem in their local community. And through this classroom-based or after-school program-based program, these kids are able to put together a solution. They actually build a prototype and they test it out, and they might rebuild it based on that testing. And so they're learning some really good STEM applications through this as well, whether that be using technology or engineering to develop these solutions. And then they do submit that to us, and they can win terrific prizes. We also, for many years, have been recommending accurate ag books. And when we say accurate, we mean depiction of modern farming, the avoidance of stereotypes, and that's things like, the old farmer in overalls with a straw hat and a pitchfork, and also avoiding animals that talk or drive tractors, that sort of thing, things that you definitely won't see on a farm. And with that recommendation of accurate ag books, one very popular program that we've had for the past 15 years is our Book of the Year Award, where we seek out not only books that are accurate about agriculture, they have an educational component and they're engaging as well. And so each year we do choose one and name it as our Book of the Year and really promote that. But we found over the years that finding accurate ag books has become more and more difficult. And so to solve that problem, several years ago, we decided that we would start our own book publishing venture. And so we've called that Feeding Minds Press. And we just released our 5th book through Feeding Minds Press, with about 6 or 7 more in the pipeline now to be published in future years. And so our goal is to publish 2 to 3 books each year going forward. And so that's become very popular.
Wow. Yeah. And that one, I actually had just learned about the Feeding Minds Press, because I recently discovered your guys' Farmside Chat podcast. And you had featured a book in one of the most recent episodes. And yeah, hearing about that was incredible. I actually, my sister and I had written a couple, like younger age agricultural based books, and we didn't really have an outlet for them. And so I found that, and I was like, hey, you got to check this out. And so I've been kind of sharing it around. I just think that's super cool, to have that much emphasis towards that type of project for people that are creative or that want to share some of that information and have a place to do it.
Absolutely. And we do accept manuscripts from people who want to write children's books about agriculture. And when we do select a manuscript, then we find a good illustrator to go along with it. We have also kind of unwittingly, we've educated some illustrators about agriculture, because while an illustrator might, be terrific at their craft, often they aren't really, that sure about agriculture. And so we want to make sure that our illustrators are illustrating correctly, being accurate in their illustrations. And so we often do connect them directly with farmers, other members of Farm Bureau, so that they can go visit the farms. And so their illustrations are not only engaging, but accurate as well.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said, that is very important to make sure that whatever people are reading, that they're getting the right idea about what's actually going on, on your modern farm, right? So one of my questions about something you mentioned earlier, these packets, these resources that you're sending out to these schools, are these mostly going to kind of ag-based communities? Or are they going to more urban communities, or kind of where is this hitting the strongest?
They're going all over, which we absolutely love that. We do love when we hear that teachers in urban settings are using our resources, because we know that the kids that they are teaching are the most removed from agriculture. But we are also hearing from rural educators that even though their students might be passing farms on their way to school, that their knowledge of what's actually happening on that farm can be very limited. So we're finding that our resources are being used really everywhere, in all types of schools.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely attest to that. I grew up in a small town in the middle of California, Tulare, and so there are a lot of people that I grew up with that saw dairies every day of their lives, and they could not tell you how a cow produces milk. They couldn't tell you what that cow eats or how many chambers are in its stomach, or they know nothing about what goes on right outside their backyard. So it's definitely important to have some of that exposure, in a context that they aren't typically going to get it. So that's great.
Right. And it really doesn't matter what subject the teachers are teaching. Agriculture can be applied in so many different classrooms. And that's one of the reasons that we are starting to lean in a little bit more into the science classrooms. All throughout the country, ag programs, ag classes are diminishing in schools, but every school has a science program. And so we have been focusing a lot of our efforts lately on developing resources and curricula for science educators, and also providing professional development for science educators as well, so that they can teach science through the lens of agriculture.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that there's a prime opportunity there because of a lot of the crossover that happens in terms of career. You were talking earlier about how we have illustrators and artists and graphic designers that are in agriculture that don't quite have that grasp of the industry just yet, and need to be exposed to it and learn more about it. I think the same could be true. The same could be said for a lot of the science community as well. There's computer scientists that are working on some of the more advanced tractors. There's biological scientists that are working in soil development, or they're working in testing in a specific crop field, and they may not have ever come from an agricultural background. And showing people that don't come from those backgrounds that that's a career option for them, or that their skills in the classroom can be applied to something practical like food production. That, in my opinion, is one of the better ways to encourage them to really see that connection to the real world.
It really is so important, that kids be exposed to different careers in agriculture. That right now, so many kids think, if I'm going to be in agriculture, I'm going to be working on a farm, and that is just so not true. And so, getting science teachers to understand the science and technology that is used in agriculture is so important. We have, over the past 5 years, developed just an incredible professional development experience for science educators. We call it On the Farm STEM. And through that program, we bring science educators from all around the country for a 3-day in-person immersive experience where they go onto farms and ranches, they go to processing facilities, they go to universities where they can get the full experience of STEM and especially science as it relates to agriculture. At the same time, they are learning about the next generation science standards, which came out about 10 years ago, but are a little clunky. They're difficult to understand, and somewhat difficult to teach. And so even 10 years later, teachers have a lot of questions and there's a lot of confusion about them. So we work with education specialists who really know the next generation science standards, like the back of their hand. And so when we can put that kind of professional development together with learning about agriculture, and put that together with the resources that we've developed, then those science teachers could go back to their classrooms and be equipped with the knowledge to comfortably teach science through the lens of agriculture as well. And so that On the Farm STEM program has really taken off, become really popular with teachers all across the country. And we've had over 250 teachers go through that program.
Wow, that's incredible. And those teachers are of varying age ranges, or like grade levels.
They generally focus on the middle and high school levels,
Okay.
because that's really what we focused our science efforts on at this
Gotcha.
point.
Okay. So I was curious a little bit about how you guys are tracking a lot of this. So do you have research going into kind of what the literacy rates are of students before and after some of these programs?
That is a really tough thing to measure. We have found that getting a baseline of kids' knowledge about agriculture is very difficult. We have built in some measurement into some of our resources so that we can measure, the before and after knowledge of students after they engage with that particular resource. We also, with our On the Farm STEM program, have built in surveys, for the teachers, but also for the kids as well. Once the teachers, implement our resources into their classrooms, and we have found that the not only the knowledge gain is pretty significant with the teachers, but also with the students, but also the critical thinking that students need when they hear messages about agriculture or about food production, that they're able to really think about that message, especially when it's something that might not be true or is something very biased. That we are finding that after kids engage with our program or our resources, they're able to critically think a little bit more about those messages.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And then I had so I'm on my show, I bring on a lot of people that are not from agricultural backgrounds and have them kind of ask questions and engage with the information a little bit, kind of see where their curiosity is at and where their knowledge is at generally. And one of the most common questions that I get is, after we talk for a little while, people start to realize either how little they knew about agriculture or how little other people knew about agriculture. And typically they go, okay, what can we do to help? People who aren't from ag backgrounds, what can they do to help out their local communities learn more about that? What would be your advice? Is it as simple as just, hey, use our resources and help teach those around you, or do you have some other advice for them?
Well, for the folks who really don't have an ag background, engaging with our resources, even though our resources are written for kids, we do have our high school resources as well. To engage with those and to educate themselves is step number one. And then once they're familiar, I would say to seek out those in their own community, or people nearby who are actually in agriculture. In talking to farmers and ranchers themselves, they really love to talk with folks, of any age, especially those who don't really understand agriculture, but they want to understand. So seeking out actual farmers and ranchers and people involved in food production and agriculture, it's a terrific step. And then to share that with other people. It's just the more people can learn and then share what they learn, we're really focused on, bringing up that next generation of informed consumers, so that if we're doing our jobs, right, in another 10, 15, 20 years, there won't be a lot of people who don't understand agriculture. We're hoping to raise that next generation of consumers that really do understand where their food comes from.
Yeah, and that transitions into another question that I had, which was based off of what you guys have seen so far, the results of what you've already done. What do you see the future of ag literacy looking like?
Well, one thing that was really interesting, as the COVID pandemic hit, was that suddenly people were more interested in where their food was coming from. When they saw empty shelves at the grocery store, and now when they're seeing higher prices at the grocery store, they're really curious about where their food is coming from. And so I think the future of ag literacy is kind of bright, because suddenly parents, kids, they are curious, and when they're curious, knowing that we have the resources to to feed that curiosity, No pun intended there. But to be able to spark and then feed that curiosity, and to answer those questions that they have is so important to us. And so I think ag literacy will take on a greater importance in all of our lives, no matter where we are.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And then I have a couple more for you, kind of, I guess, harder questions, I guess I would say. So this is one that I've struggled with a lot. So I'm curious about your thoughts on it. What would someone need to know to be considered agriculturally literate? Where's the line for that?
Well, I think it really depends on their age. When we focus on kids, we look at what we call the pillars of ag literacy. And so we've developed sort of a knowledge baseline that we believe, kids in like pre-K through, say, third grade, a baseline of knowledge that they should have, that it's really more about awareness rather than a full understanding at that age on different topics that might be the relationship of agriculture and animals, or agriculture and technology, or agriculture and the environment, different things like that. But then as you get older, say that like fourth through eighth grade, it's a little bit more discovery. So understanding those different topics a little bit more. And then as you get into the older grades, you would look for being able to cite specific examples of different things in agriculture, and understanding how that relationship, again, between, let's say, agriculture and technology, how technology is really making agriculture more efficient, making food production more efficient, producing more with fewer inputs. So really, the definition of ag literacy is a tough one, and it really does depend on the age of the person that you're talking to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's how we would regard literacy for most other things as well, right? So that would make sense that would be the standard for agriculture.
Right.
And then I think my final question for you is for other people involved in ag literacy. So give you a little bit of background. When I started my podcast 4 years ago, I saw next to no other podcast doing ag education or ag literacy based content. Now there's a bunch of us. I've seen them popping up left and right, especially when COVID hit. There was a lot of podcasts starting to show up, and a lot of, like you mentioned, people that were curious about agriculture. So for those of us that are involved in ag literacy and trying to get more awareness out to different types of groups, what would your advice be?
I think we really just need to be doing exactly what we're doing right now. We are supporting each other. We're sharing each other's resources. The more that we can collaborate rather than compete, I think will really move the needle on ag literacy. I think it's great that so many podcasts have sprung up in the past couple of years. I think it's great that there are so many different organizations focused on ag literacy, really wanting to make that difference. So I think the more of us there are, and the more that we can all work together, the better it's going to be for all of us.
I would agree with that. That's actually kind of my mission right now, is to connect with as many different people kind of going after this same goal and try to work together. I've actually just established a partnership with the Center for Land-Based Learning and with Sierra Harvest, and a couple other ag literacy based podcasts as well. I'm trying to get a kind of a project of different groups together to work together on some various ideas for future things we can do for ag literacy. So I think you're right.
That's terrific. Great to hear.
Yeah. So, and by the way, if you know of anyone else in this kind of field that you think would be interested in working together on some of this kind of stuff, shoot them my way. I'd be happy to connect with them.
Oh, I absolutely will. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, those are all the questions I had. If you have any other closing statements you'd like to add on, feel free. Or if you have any resources you'd like to plug for me to share around, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'm sure we can throw some links in the show notes. And so we'll definitely provide that, because I think, some of the websites that we have at the foundation are just absolutely terrific. The myamericanfarm.org, game platform, the purpleplow.org, STEM challenge, things like the On the Farm STEM program. We can link to all of that because learning about agriculture really never stops. I spent my early childhood on a farm, but then after that was quite removed from agriculture. But I feel that just that experience alone, in my early childhood kind of gave me a little bit of a head start. So we want to make sure that everybody gets a head start. Everybody's on a level playing field. And so even now, as an adult, I learn something new about agriculture every day. And so I think we all just need to commit to being lifelong learners about agriculture.
Yeah, I like that. Well, like you mentioned, I'll put all the links down in the description for everyone to go find, and I'll share it around on all of my platforms as well, so people can go find all of those things. For those of you listening that are not in the agricultural, community, by all means, reach out and find some of these resources and share them around with your friends and have other people try them out, or even for those who are in the agricultural community, because like we mentioned, it definitely helps just to have some more exposure to those types of things. But I'd like to thank our guest Daniel here for joining me. This was a great interview. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think this was a very insightful interview for the future of ag literacy. I have a pretty optimistic view of it, so I think it's going to be a very fun next few years as we work on these types of projects. But that's all I have. So thanks again, for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Brandon.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
All right, I'm glad. Well, thank you again. Thanks to all the listeners for tuning in, and don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer. So there you have it. That was this week's episode. Thank you once again to Daniel for being such a fantastic guest as we discuss potentially the future of agricultural literacy and the variety of projects and ideas that they are working on that very closely align with what we're trying to do here. I really look forward to sharing with you guys all the experiences that I have in Washington. At the time of recording this, I haven't left yet, but it will be a couple days from now that I'll be heading out there. And it's going to be a pretty short trip, but I will be sure to post as much as I can about what I learn, the networks I build, and all the connections that I'm able to make. By that being said, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I hope you learned a thing or two. Check the description for all of Daniel's links and all of the links to our social media pages so you can go and like and subscribe and follow and share and do all those great things. If you are interested in donating to the Patreon, it will also be down in the description. It's by no means mandatory, but once again, it is very much appreciated. And that is all I have for you guys. So I will be sure to update you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.